All right, what is going on, peeps? So today's actually a pretty awesome day. Finally, all the parts arrived for the fuel system, so it's finally time to start installing parts. I think today's probably going to be the first day of actually making some progress on this, hunk of junk that's in my garage. So first things first that I needed to get was the actual Motorcraft gasket for the fuel pump. So on the last video, you probably saw that the old one kind of didn't fit. I thought about trimming the little nubs on it, but just decided to, head over to the internet and hit up LMR. They're probably the most badass restoration part store. So if you ever need parts, they have legit Motorcraft. So here's the part number if you need it. It's probably backwards, but CG-7971X. Yeah, so this is the correct fuel pump gasket. I already got it installed. I ordered myself a couple little other things. This is OEM fuel tank breather, OEM style filler neck, grommet. I even got myself some new studs for the straps. So, and then I even went ahead and just bolted everything down nice and tight, snugged everything up, so I know this is good to go. So next thing to do is honestly just kind of start running some lines, seeing where they're gonna go. I'm thinking possibly, I used to run them down the passenger side last time. I'm debating running them through the driver's side because I have the battery cables running through the passenger side. So this is gonna be something I kind of got to figure out where I want it to land. I still got to paint the engine bay some just to make it look a little bit nicer. So I'm gonna go ahead and figure out where I want to throw these fuel lines through and get cracking. All right, so I kind of already started making the lines. I have my, I guess this would be the feed line. I already have the return kind of started. So one quick little trick that Fore Innovation says in their instructions is always kind of like, I don't know if you can see that, but tape up the ends. So this is kind of why I hate this style of line. I kind of wish I would have paid a little bit more attention and ordered the nylon braided line, because you don't have to deal with these little guys. These guys will stab the ever-loving F out of your fingers. So before you want to cut it, you definitely want to tape it up. It kind of helps hold all of these little guys on, and if there's any way that you can slide the connector on before, do so, because if you can see, that was like a nice fresh cut and it just flared those ends out. So I already have one end on. I kind of thought ahead and threw this end on, since I could slide it in through the back end. And I'm actually pretty glad I did, because once I take off this tape, it's gonna want to flare out. So let me go ahead, remove this tape. I have no dexterity whenever I wear gloves, but even though these are just latex gloves, some protection is better than no protection. So you're gonna want to grab your little crush collar, and this goes on the outside of the PTFE hose. So the PTFE hose is that little plastic hose in there. I already cleaned it out. So what I used was the cutoff wheel on a grinder. Fore Innovations, they specifically say in their instructions that it will work, except you will get a little bit of dust. One thing you don't want to do is use really cheap like bolt cutters, because especially if they're not sharp enough to really cut, you're just gonna damage that PTFE liner in there. And I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with this one. All the other ones kind of just slid right in. Of course, the one I record is the one I have the most amount of troubles on. All right, there it goes. Cool, got it. And then grab my little hammer and just smack it on. So here you go. You want to make sure that little liner is all the way to the top. Then you can slide it up. Next thing is, I already have a little bit of lube on this guy. Toss the other end of the hose in. Do your best to work it on. And then if you have those like really trick billet aluminum vise, grip things, this would be about the time where you would use it. But I'm a broke boy, so I'm just using a 7/8 and an adjustable to do this. I've done this in the past multiple times. I even made my power steering lines like this. And other than every now and then you get your occasional leak where you just need to snug it up some more, it works perfectly. So, no need to change it up or spend unnecessary amounts of money on stuff unless I do this regularly, or I would want like a premier finish, then I would order that part. But there you have it. This is the first piece of the feed line. This is actually where your filter is going to go. I kind of already scoped it out where I want my filter to go. I'll show you guys once I have all the lines ran, how everything looks. So I'm gonna go ahead, get back to it, build the rest of the lines, except for the very ends, I would say, of the feed and the return, because I still don't know where I want my fuel regulator to go. So I think I'm probably gonna find a new spot for it, because I will not have the strut tower brace, just because I have some other upgrades that might get in the way of the strut tower brace. So I'm gonna have to find a new home for the fuel regulator. So got this guy on. Gonna go ahead and throw it on, start mounting the fuel filter, and then keep at it. So see you in a bit. All right, so gonna take a quick trip around the car. So got the fuel lines all the way to the front. I don't know if you can see it too well, but used the supplied P-clamps. Here, let's take a look underneath the cart. So, grab some light. There you can kind of see how I ran them. Not the prettiest install. I'm probably gonna, readjust these later on. But I chose this area for the filter for ease of service. And it's a good spot right here where I have plenty of nice solid steel that I can build a nice shield for it, in case if I ever do kind of high center or anything, it'll impact the subframe connectors. So no issues there. Went up over the whole subframe and then out the back. So now I'm gonna go ahead, run back there and see if I can get the whole fuel tank hooked up and installed. Alrighty, so we have the gas tank in. I went ahead and painted this because it was starting to look pretty sorry. Just gotta connect, the hose safety. Everything went in nice and snug. The hose fit beautifully. The tank, I think it's slightly differently shaped up top. So the one thing that does make me just a hair nervous is I didn't want to snug it down too far, or I think it's not supposed to have the plastic liner. But this isn't all the way up, and then also that one as well. You can kind of see how there's a little bit of an air gap, but that guy started getting really tight on me. Same with the strap, was starting to get really tight, so I did not want to over tighten it and crush anything. But everything, the fuel lines up top, they're barely touching. So I did not want to damage any of the components, so that's how I left it. Excuse me, I'm being attacked by a moth, but I think overall everything came out really nice. Everything's nicely tucked up. Same with the battery cables, they run along that little lip and then up into the car. The next course of action, of course, is to start wiring the fuel pumps in. So I'm gonna go ahead, toss in the battery so I can kind of gauge where the wiring is gonna go, and then also see where I could put the FC2 controller in. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and get at it, and then I'll show you how I got it done. Alrighty, so let's take a good look at how I set this guy up. So here you got the wires from the fuel pumps coming in. There you are, your connectors, straight into the FC2 controller. I was able to mount it right here on the side, really nice. And then of course that is getting its feed power from the battery. But before the battery, it does have this nice 80 amp breaker, so if it ever trips, you know, you'll see it and then you can just trip it back. It actually came with these really nice little grommets. I even put a little bit of heat shrink here on the cables, and of course, you know, no battery in there at the moment, but we'll get a battery later. And then of course for the ground, we follow it up, and I'm actually using the exact same ground for the battery for the chassis ground. This is one of the grounds. I still have, you know, a couple other grounds that go to the chassis, so I went ahead and used this one because I've always had good luck with that one. And then of course for the remote wire, this is essentially what's going to turn on the FC2 controller and essentially tell it to, you know, pump out full battery power to the pumps. That is coming from somewhere down here. This is the pink and black wire, so it's all heat shrinked up. I still got to clean it up a little bit more, but I actually had a lot of leftover wire from the fuel pump wiring harness, so I just used one of those red wires since it'll kind of match, and soldered it to the factory fuel pump power wire. So that'll turn into the remote wire that'll essentially, you know, flick on the breaker in here and tell this little box to, you know, pump out all the juice to the fuel pumps, and that's it. So another thing I did want to talk about, so I did end up, you know, welding that little patch panel back in, you know, not the prettiest welds, but they're there. For the fuel level sender, I actually tapped it into the factory wiring, so once I, you know, set up my gauges, I can actually go off of the factory wiring. I don't actually have to run a wire from the very back all the way to the front, all that stuff. There's already wires in the car, so I decided to just use those. So I just clipped the two wires, you know, clip the last of whatever's left of the connector off of there, and then just use those two little wires. I think it was the yellow and a black one, so power and ground. So those are already running to the dash. So once I set up my whole new gauge setup, I'll just be able to tap into those wires up there, you know, set up the fuel level sender, so that way I know how much fuel's in the tank. So yeah. So overall, this was an actually pretty fun install. I did kind of get into the weeds into it a little bit because it was, you know, trying to figure out where the hoses went. I had to move the battery cables. So then once I moved the battery cables, I had to, you know, reroute those before I could route the fuel cable or the fuel hoses. And then before I could route the fuel hoses, I kind of had to, you know, move some other stuff around. And then it was a whole lot of like test fitting, removing, test fitting, removing. So, you know, the more time you spend on test fitting, then the better product you're going to get. So here I'm actually pretty happy because I do have a little particle board, not particle board, MDF that will sit here, and it kind of makes this area flat. So I can actually still use, you know, the trunk as a trunk, and then it'll protect all these wires at the same time as well from ever getting damaged. So, you know, I know this little controller is in a nice little spot. It's got plenty of air, shouldn't overheat. This area doesn't really get too hot anyways. So, you know, it's right next to the battery, so limiting the battery cable length actually helps the cut down on the resistance of the cable itself. So I know this should be a very, very reliable setup with very minimal, you know, spots for any kind of failure points. Other than the tank going in a little tight, I think everything went in pretty solid. I'm actually pretty happy. The fuel filler neck fit perfectly. The hoses, you know, I was able to run all those lines all the way to the front. The only thing I got to do is just figure out where I want to set the regulator, but I think until then I'm gonna go ahead and wait until I have the whole engine inside, just because I don't want to, you know, cut the fuel hoses to final length just yet, until I am for sure 100% that that's exactly where I'm going to want the regulator, because I don't want any extra hose. I want to just literally bolt that in and have the hoses be the perfect length, so have the super clean and simple install. So I think I'm just gonna hold off on the regulator for today. Once I get the motor back and I do a test fit with the motor, then I will go ahead and kind of finish the rest of the fuel system from there. So I think I still have plenty of parts. So this is, you know, of course I used a ton of tools. I still got all of these 180 degrees that I can use, 90s that I can, you know, these seem to be a little bit on the overkill side, but you know, it looks like they're multiple pieces. I could probably make something happen out of these. So I think I still got plenty of stuff I can use, and then definitely plenty of hose. So I feel like I got at least a solid 5 feet extra. So this is how much extra hose you get in the kit. So this kit, definitely have it in a lot of different cars, and run it a lot of different ways, so you don't have to worry about ever running out of hose. So I think with that, time to call it a night. Again, if you guys appreciate what you see, you know, go ahead and press the like button. If you don't, then oh well, maybe next time I'll do better. But all right, so with that, I think I'm gonna call it a night. Catch you guys later. Peace.